Hello and welcome to Contemplations, the podcast, where we ponder questions. I am your host, Kinah, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast and let me know your thoughts by leaving reviews. I hope that you leave this conversation pondering things that move you further in the right direction. Enjoy! Okay, so we are officially here. It is episode 1 of our 7-episode series in this season, and I'm super excited to bring to you this conversation that I had with Alex, who's a really good friend of mine. He's pretty much my family member, honestly. And we talked about nostalgia, which according to Wikipedia is a sentimentality for the past. So we talked about how nostalgia affects us, how it has shaped how we behave and how we interact with life. And we talk about so many interesting things, and I won't even spoil it, but I did split this conversation into 2 parts because it was that good. And I really hope that you enjoy it. But before you do enjoy the podcast, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and check in the description box to keep up with me and the podcast. And please leave your feedback, because I really do appreciate hearing what you have to say and what your thoughts are about the podcast. And without further ado, I will smoothly transition this intro into our actual conversation. I hope you really enjoy it as much as I did, and I will chat to you on the other side. We've hashed out like some of the technical thingamabobs with this. So, okay, I will ask you again. Could you please, before we begin, introduce yourself to the listeners?
Will do. My name is Alex. I also live in the Greater Vancouver area, and I've known Kinah for a few years now. I'm an audio engineer and a music producer, and I've done some different music projects with her due to her enormous amounts of talent.
Enormous amounts of talent.
That's right. I think because we're going to be talking a bit about nostalgia, it might help to have at least some information of my past, because that's what nostalgia is usually about. Yeah. So my experiences, my parents are Canadian, and then they moved originally to Burundi in the early 80s. And from there, due to my dad's work, they worked in many different countries in Africa and then also in the Caribbean for a bit. So that I grew up kind of moving every 4 or 5 years, mainly in Southern and Eastern Africa, and a little bit of time in Ghana, which obviously has better jollof than Nigeria.
Are we starting that now?
We have to start with a fight, always. But yeah, so I moved to Canada, I think, after high school, so when I was 18. And then I've been living here on and off since then, kind of. Yeah. So yeah, is there anything else I should say?
No, that's pretty good, because I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, because we've had this conversation, so I'm a little privy to some of the really amazing ideas you have on nostalgia. But I thought, as a good starting point, when people think of nostalgia, like you said, they think of the past. So I thought it'd be nice to give that background, because even looking at nostalgia through that specific lens, I still feel like you have so much to offer. And that might even be one of the tools in your arsenal as to why I think you have probably a deeper relationship with nostalgia than the average person would, because a lot of people don't travel a lot, or a lot of people haven't traveled as much as you have in terms of actually living in different countries and building significant parts of your life in different spaces, and being in a different space now than a space that you were familiar with a few years ago, for example. yeah, so I thank you for sharing that. I really wanted to start off with that because I thought it would provide like a good framework for what we're going to be chatting about. So yeah, I did send you some questions. They're not a lot of questions, but I feel like we could talk a bit about all those questions. So that's why I wanted to make it brief anyway. So the first one that I was going to ask you is, I know that you think a lot about nostalgia. We've talked about this. Can you speak a little bit as to why you think a lot about nostalgia?
Yeah, I think we all interact with nostalgia in some way. But I think kind of what you were saying, because of my experiences, I think nostalgia is a bit more confusing for me. So then when something's confusing, you think about it more. Because it's not simple. I don't know someone else's experiences, but I would imagine just even from knowing my wife, who grew up in one place her whole life, the nostalgia she might feel, I think, might have a simpler... So, not that she feels that much nostalgia, but it's like what you miss, it's clear what you miss. You miss certain people, certain times, certain places, a time of your life that was fun, because there's a certain stability to it. I think in my case, because I moved a lot, I'm always feeling nostalgia, and it's always for different things, but small things. So it's like in the morning, I'm missing one thing from one place I lived, and in the afternoon, I'm missing something different from another place I lived. So it's confusing to the brain because you're missing so much that in reality are so far apart. But because they're inside you, they're so close. So you can miss one right after the other, but they're 10,000 kilometers away from each other in real life. You miss a dish from this place and a song from that place. So it's kind of confusing on your mind. So you think about it a lot of like, what am I actually feeling? What do I miss?
I think that's very interesting that you mentioned missing things that are very different from different parts. But then they're all, because you have one brain, right? Your brain doesn't say, now we're in this one space, we're going to think about this one thing. And for people like us, when something is confusing, you're right. Because I feel like this might not be true for everyone. Maybe some people, when things confuse them, they just let it go. But for us, we're like, oh, it's bugging me. Like, I'm going to just keep thinking about it. Yeah. So in that case, I wanted you to speak a little bit more about how, because I think you articulated it so well, but how that picture, what does that look like, naming the idea that you're missing, for example, food from Burundi, because it can't be from Ghana, because Ghana food is, I will not talk about that. And like, I'm just maybe
let that one slide. We can just move on.
And then maybe music from Ghana, for example. And those are two entirely different experiences from two different parts of your life. But then you can feel that like longing for them in one space. Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah. How does it work? It works confusingly, but it's still really nice, and it's still bittersweet. I think the interesting thing for me is once you start thinking about nostalgia, usually you don't stop at the thing that you're actually missing. You go further to why you're actually missing it. Because if I miss like certain songs or music from Ghana, which is the beautiful thing about that, is I can just go back and listen to them. I know exactly which songs I'm missing. And when I'm listening to them again, you realize, is it so much about the song, or is it that when you listen to that song at that one point in your life, there was something pleasant, you were happy, or you had a lot of friends around you, or you were falling in love, or what was it? You know, like why is that song actually bringing you happiness? Because often it's connected to your actual emotions beyond just the song.
Right. And for me, I think, I don't know why, but I think that I started understanding that much later. So I would be missing something, like a song, and it'll take me back to maybe a childhood memory or a time in my life. But I wouldn't necessarily immediately connect the dots that I was associating the memory or the thing I'm missing with the memory. So for me, it's a little slower to get to the point where I'm like, it's not just jollof rice I'm missing. It's the time that I had jollof rice with my friends in this one particular scenario. It was that thing that I'm missing. And I think that's very interesting that like people can have the same feeling of nostalgia and have different experiences with it, which kind of leads me to my second question for you, because I know that this is something that's, I think, unique to everyone, but I think it does play a significant role. But how significant a role, I'm still trying to figure out. So I was going to ask you, what role has nostalgia played in your life, and how big of a role has that been for you? Like, picture your life with, and if you can, without the ability to feel nostalgic. Like, how do you think it'll look?
Yeah, it's almost impossible to picture it without. It's so.
Yeah.
It's like, in a way, it's our connection to the positive, at least in our past. It can also be negative, I think, but like, I think it's hard to imagine like my day-to-day would just look different if I wasn't always reliving moments from my past or remembering things from my past. So it really would change a lot. It definitely would change what my profession is. I think the kind of music I make is so much just me trying to find some happiness I had when I was young in that music. And I think a lot of the art I engage with and the movies I watch, like when I'm seeking some feeling from the arts, it's often very linked to nostalgia, and it's very linked to the things you remember seeing or hearing and how that made you feel.
Yeah. I remember when I played you The Caveman, and we both were just like, The Caveman, the song, the one I played for you last week. And it was just like, it just took us back, really. Just like, and that's why we really enjoyed the music. It's not that like regular Afrobeats isn't good, but it's like that music that reminds you of something that you had when you were younger, or like some happy experiences or memories that you had. So I think, you're correct. It's very, very powerful. And I think, just for you to say it, I'm even curious, because I think we're both on the same page about this, the fact that picturing our lives without nostalgia is very tough, because it's like, we just, how, and I think it's rooted in the fact that we have lived in different places. So I guess to tag on to that, just to hypothesize, because we don't know what's going on in the mind of people. And I know I'm going to interview Marika next week to get that perspective from her. But what do you think it would be in the mind of someone who hasn't physically moved around, whose life has been pretty, not as like, just, I don't want to use the word stable, but just in terms of location, they've been pretty in one place. How do you think they interact with the nostalgia? Like, do you think it's different or the same?
I think there's, because we're all human, we're going to have so much in common of how we're interacting with things. But I do think there's some differences. I don't really know how to articulate it, but I think one of the things actually that almost in a way protects us, and by us I mean people who maybe are now living in a place where they did not spend their childhood. So let's put it that way. So anyone who's living somewhere where they didn't spend their childhood, I think it protects you in a way, because you'll think, I miss this thing, I miss feeling this way, and it's kind of easier to just be like, I miss that because I'm not in that place, or I miss that food, or I miss hearing the sound of this language around me. I miss this or that. And the reason I don't have it is just because I live in a different place. So it's an easy kind of explanation. Then you have more to do to explore it inside yourself and actually understand your feelings and not just bottle it up. But I think for people, I think for people who live in the same place that they grew up, nostalgia can sometimes take a darker turn, in the sense that maybe you're missing things from your childhood, but you live in the same place, so you're looking for reasons. Why is my world changed? Why don't I have the same things that I had when I was a child? And I think then people can put that on exterior things when it's not really about that. Like if you feel like your hometown has changed a lot since you were a child, it has for sure. But I think often you can think, well, I'm not feeling the way I did when I was a child, so it's the fault of whatever has made my town look different. When in reality, probably what you miss is the fact that when you were a child, you had no responsibilities, and your parents fed you, and you didn't have stress, and you didn't have a job, and you didn't have a terrible economy. You didn't know there was an economy. You just got to play and eat, and so you're missing one thing. And you might not realize it, and then you kind of might blame it on something else that it hasn't actually affected what you're actually missing, which is just you miss no responsibility and unconditional love from parents and friends. So
no, that's a very interesting idea, and I didn't think about it that way because, like you said, that's something. For me, I would have to observe with people who stayed in one place for a while. Because even in Nigeria, I didn't live in one place for long. So I always moved. And this leads me into my next question. But I felt like at some point in my life, I got addicted to moving. Even when I got to Vancouver, I was like, when am I going to leave?
You're always trying to leave us.
Yeah.
I don't know why. What do we do to you?
Because I got so used to leaving. And so when I stay somewhere longer than I'm used to, I'm like, what am I going to do here? Like,
I know what you mean. Like, I've lived now in Vancouver for six and a half years, and that's the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my life. So it's really weird to me that this place that I probably would say is the place I feel the least connected to in my whole life is the place I've lived the longest and should feel the most connected to. And it makes you feel a bit trapped because you're like, wait, I've lived here for so long, but it doesn't feel like home. Maybe I should move. Maybe there's something better somewhere else for me.
Exactly.
But I think a lot of the time your mind is playing tricks on you. But I mean, there's probably some truth to that. But I think more what it is nostalgia. Is the trickiness of it is that it tricks your mind into thinking that there's things and places out there that will make you happier when happiness is internal, and you should be able to try and find your happiness anywhere you live. Granted, there's certain things that will connect to you more easily than others. But at the end of the day, it's not the world's responsibility. It's not the food and the music that should bring you true happiness. You have to learn how to find that within yourself.
Absolutely.
So,
oh man, that's so good. It's so true because I've been struggling with that a lot because I'm like, where am I? Like, I want to stay in Vancouver because I have all you guys here, but I'm like, I'm so used to leaving because I have people everywhere,
And you can always you're such a friendly person that I think you've always experienced that you can form new close circles of friends. So it's not that scary to leave. Maybe there's something better somewhere else.
Exactly. It's just like that unknown of, Am I like, why am I here? You really hit the nail on the head with that. Like, I've been here for so long. Why should I remain here longer? Why is this place better than the other places I've lived in? Why should I settle here? And it's just like, maybe there's somewhere else. And the funny thing is, when I say I want to move, people assume I want to move back to something that's familiar. And it's like, no, I want to go somewhere I haven't lived before. Actually, the places I've lived before, I'm like, I don't mind not living there, which is weird because I'm like, on one hand, every time I move to a new place, I keep thinking of the old place. Like, oh, I miss this place. I miss this place. But then when you go back to that place has changed so much. It's not this, it's like it didn't remain in the bottle you kept it in.
No.
Like, I just recently went home this year and I was telling you about this like a couple weeks ago, how I went home and some things were the same, but some things had changed. A lot of things had changed so much. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't just the way I had thought about it, pined for it. Like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go home and I will have all these things. It wasn't that. People had moved, new people had come in. It was just like, it was different. So while it was really good to reconnect with some aspects that were familiar to me, it was like, if I decide to live here, it might be as good as living in a new city because I don't know a lot about this place that I once knew so deeply. And then to know that and to know that it takes work to do that and still crave moving again, to be like, let's do this again. It's almost like an adrenaline. It's not adrenaline, but it's like the rush for something to be nostalgic about, getting addicted to the feeling of nostalgia, which is one of the things that I wanted you to speak on in terms of how you think nostalgia can be toxic, you raised such a good point that I really wanted you to talk about. The last time we talked about this, about how nostalgia doesn't only have to be about places. It can be about privilege or something that we just are used to having that we don't have anymore. So if you can talk more about that.
For sure. I think that's definitely...
Hi. Wasn't that so much fun? That was so cool. Oh my gosh. I really enjoyed that conversation. I'm sorry if my got in the way of you listening. I will try to tone that down next time, but I was just really, that's how we usually are in conversation, and I'm really grateful for the insight that he has to provide, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have conversations like this. I really did hope that you enjoy it. You enjoyed it, and the next part will be coming out, so be on the lookout for that. Again, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my podcast and leave me your thoughts on how you think this went, what you found valuable. If you have any ideas for what you want me to talk about, just let me know. Like I said, I'm not giving advice or anything in my thoughts. I don't know anything. I'm just thinking out loud, really, literally. So, that is the end of today's podcast. I'm really hoping, like I said, for the millionth time, that you had a good time listening. And I'm going to sign out at this point and say peace and blessings to you. And I really do hope I see you again on the part 2 next episode of Nostalgia. Ciao!